The emergency alarm screamed through Medical Station Theta 7. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Doctors and nurses from dozens of alien species rushed toward their posts. Something big was coming. Something bad. Dr. Velshara clicked her 6 legs nervously on the metal floor. She was the chief surgeon of the station. Her insect-like body trembled as she read the incoming message on her datapad. Her compound eyes grew wider with each word. "No," she whispered in her clicking language. Not one of them. A young nurse approached her. He was from the Pelthian species, covered in blue fur with 4 arms. His voice was shaking. "Dr. Velshara, what is it? What species is coming?" "A draconian," she said. The word fell like a stone in water. Everyone nearby stopped moving. Fear filled the air like smoke. Draconians were the stuff of nightmares across the galaxy. They were massive creatures that looked like the ancient dragons from human stories. But these were real. They had black scales that could stop laser fire. They had teeth as long as knives. Their eyes glowed with inner fire. They could smell fear, and fear made them angry. Angry draconians killed. The stories about them were terrible. A draconian had once eaten a doctor who tried to give it medicine. Another had burned down an entire hospital wing because the pain made it lose control. They were predators, killers, monsters. No one wanted to treat them. No one dared to treat them. The emergency doors opened with a hiss. 6 security robots carried a massive stretcher. On it lay Korthax. He was 3 meters of dying dragon. His obsidian scales were cracked and burned. Bright green blood dripped from his wounds. It sizzled and smoked when it hit the floor. Acid. His blood was acid. Korthax's breathing was shallow and wet. Each breath sounded like wind through broken glass. His eyes flickered open. They were orange like flames. They looked at all the doctors standing around him. Then they closed again. "He has plasma burns on 60% of his body," one robot said. Its voice was flat and emotionless. "Multiple organ failure. Blood loss critical. He needs surgery now or he dies in 30 minutes. Dr. Velshara looked at her staff. More than 20 doctors from different species stood in the emergency bay. All of them were good at their jobs. All of them had saved hundreds of lives. But not one of them moved forward. "Who will take this case?" Velshara asked. Her voice cracked with stress. Silence, the kind of silence that feels heavy and thick. A Krellian doctor with tentacles shook his head. His skin turned pale blue with fear. He had seen what happened when you got too close to a draconian in pain. A tall, thin Zetherian doctor backed away slowly. Her people were logical and careful. The logical choice was to let the draconian die. It was safer that way. Even the robot doctors refused. They ran calculations in their computer brains. The risk was too high. Their programming told them to save themselves. On the stretcher, Korthax made a sound. It was something between a growl and a whimper. His clawed hand twitched. His scales rattled together like armor. "This is unacceptable," Velshara said. "We are doctors. We took oaths. We saved lives. All lives, but still no one moved. Fear was stronger than oaths. Survival was stronger than duty. Transfer him to the containment ward," one doctor said. "Let him die there. It's cleaner." Others nodded. "Yes. Better that way. Safer. No one gets hurt." Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the back of the crowd. She was human. She had been working on the station for only 3 months. She was still new, still learning how aliens did things, still getting used to the strange rules and customs. She watched the scene unfold with growing disbelief. Back on Earth, she had worked in some of the worst emergency rooms in North America. She had treated gang members while they still had guns in their pockets. She had patched up soldiers who were so drugged up on painkillers they didn't know where they were. She had once fixed a man's chest wound while he punched the wall and screamed at her. Difficult patients were nothing new. Dangerous patients were part of the job. You didn't refuse treatment because someone was scary. You didn't let people die because you were afraid. Sarah pushed through the crowd. She was short compared to most aliens, only about 160 centimeters tall. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore the standard blue medical uniform. Nothing special. Nothing impressive, but she walked right up to the stretcher, right up to the dying dragon, close enough to smell the burnt flesh and acid blood. "I'll do it," she said. Her voice was calm, steady, like she was volunteering to make coffee instead of performing surgery on a monster. Everyone stared at her. Velshara's compound eyes focused on the small human. Dr. Chen, you do not understand, Velshara said carefully. This is a draconian. They are extremely dangerous. Many doctors have died trying to treat them. You are new here. You have not seen what they can do. Sarah looked down at Korthax. His breathing was getting worse. His scales were turning gray at the edges. He was dying. Right now, while everyone stood around talking. I understand perfectly, Sarah said. He's a patient. He's dying. And I'm a doctor. That's all I need to know. She turned to the security robots. Take him to operating room 3. Get me acid-resistant tools, and prep the strongest anesthetic we have. I need to start in 5 minutes or we lose him. The robots looked at each other. Then they looked at Velshara. The chief surgeon's mandibles clicked together nervously. Do what she says, Velshara said finally. She sounded tired, defeated, but maybe also a little bit impressed. As the robots moved the stretcher toward the operating room, Sarah followed. She didn't look back at all the other doctors. She didn't care what they thought. She didn't care about their fear or their rules. She had a patient, and that patient needed help. That was all that mattered. Behind her, the alien doctors whispered to each other in dozens of different languages. Some thought she was brave. Some thought she was stupid. Some thought she was crazy. But all of them thought the same thing: they would never see the human doctor again. Were harsh and clinical. Medical equipment hummed and beeped all around. The robots laid Korthax on the operating table. It was specially reinforced for large species. But even then, the dragon's weight made the metal groan. Sarah scrubbed her hands in the prep station. She moved quickly but carefully. Each step was automatic. She had done this thousands of times. Soap, water, scrub between operating room 3 was cold and bright. The walls were white metal. The lights in the fingers, under the nails, up to the elbows. Rinse. Repeat. Through the window she could see dozens of alien doctors watching. They stood in the observation room above. Some had their hands over their mouths. Some had their tentacles crossed. All of them looked afraid for her. Sarah ignored them. She had learned long ago not to think about spectators. They weren't in the room. They couldn't help. They didn't matter. A robot assistant rolled up with the surgical tools. They were made of a special metal alloy that could resist acid. Sarah examined each one carefully. Scalpel, retractor, clamp, needle, thread. Everything she needed was there. She pulled on her gloves. They were thick and reinforced. Then the surgical gown. Then the face shield. Protection was important, but protection could only do so much against a creature like this. Sarah walked to the operating table. Up close, Korthax was even more terrifying. His head was the size of a small car. His teeth were visible even with his mouth closed. Each tooth was as long as her hand. His claws were curved and sharp, made for killing, but Sarah didn't see a monster. She saw a patient. She saw burn injuries. She saw shock. She saw pain. She saw someone who needed help. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder. The scales were hot to touch. Fever. His body was fighting infection. Korthax, she said softly. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm going to help you. You're badly hurt, but I'm going to fix you. Do you understand me? The dragon's eyes flickered open. Those orange flames stared at her. Sarah looked right back. She didn't look away. She didn't flinch. In the observation room, Dr. Velshara gasped. Making eye contact with a draconian was dangerous. It was a challenge, a threat. The human was going to get killed before she even started. But Korthax just stared at Sarah. His pupils were huge and unfocused. He was in too much pain to be angry. Too weak to be dangerous. He made a low rumbling sound deep in his chest. I know it hurts, Sarah said. I'm going to give you medicine for the pain. Then I'm going to put you to sleep so I can operate. When you wake up, you'll feel better. I promise. She prepared the anesthetic. The dose was massive. Draconians were huge and had fast metabolisms. What would kill 3 humans was barely enough for 1 dragon. Sarah injected the medicine into Korthax's thick neck. She had to push hard to get the needle through his scales. The dragon's muscles tensed. His claws scraped the metal table. But then the medicine started working. His breathing slowed. His eyes became heavy. That's it, Sarah said gently. Just relax. Let the medicine work. I've got you. Korthax's eyes closed. His body went limp. Sarah checked his vital signs on the monitor. Heart rate slowing. Breathing steady. blood pressure dropping to safe levels. Good. He was under. Now we can begin, Sarah said to the robot assistant. Monitor his vitals every 30 seconds. Alert me immediately if anything changes. Understood, the robot replied. Sarah picked up her scalpel and began to work. The plasma burns covered most of Korthax's torso. The scales were melted and cracked. Beneath them, the flesh was charred black and red. Some areas were burned so deep she could see bone. She started by removing the dead tissue. Each cut had to be precise. Too shallow and she'd leave infected material. Too deep and she'd cause more damage. Her hands moved with practiced skill. Cut. Remove. Clean. Move to the next area. Cut. Remove. Clean. The acid blood made everything harder. When it dripped onto her tools, they started to corrode. She had to switch instruments every few minutes. The robot assistants worked fast to keep supplying her with fresh tools. Hours passed. Sarah's arms ached. Her back hurt from bending over. Sweat dripped down her face behind the shield. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. In the observation room, the alien doctors watched in stunned silence. They had never seen anything like this. The human was so small compared to the draconian, like a mouse trying to fix an elephant. But her movements were confident, professional. She knew what she was doing. She's not afraid, one doctor whispered. She should be, another replied. Sarah reached the deep burns near Korthax's vital organs. This was the critical part. One wrong move and he would die on the table. She had to be perfect. She carefully cut away the damaged tissue around his lung. The organ was partially collapsed. She repaired the tears with tiny stitches. Each stitch had to be exact. The thread was made of synthetic material that wouldn't dissolve in his acidic blood. Next was his liver. It was badly damaged. In humans, this would be fatal. But draconians had amazing regenerative abilities. If she could stabilize the organ, his body would heal the rest. Sarah worked for hours more. She lost track of time. All that existed was the patient in front of her. The burns, the damage, the repairs. One problem at a time. One fix at a time. Then something went wrong. The monitor beeped loudly. Red lights flashed. Korthax's vitals spiked. His heart rate jumped. His blood pressure shot up. His eyes snapped open. He's waking up, the robot assistant said. Anesthetic resistance. Common in draconian species, Korthax roared. It was a sound that shook the entire room. His massive body thrashed. His tail swept across the floor. Medical equipment crashed and shattered. His clawed hand shot out and grabbed Sarah by the throat. In the observation room, the alien doctors screamed. Some covered their eyes. They couldn't watch. The human was dead. The dragon would crush her throat. It was over, but Sarah didn't struggle. She didn't try to pull away. She just looked calmly into Korthax's burning eyes. Korthax, she said. Her voice was strained but steady. It's okay. You're in surgery. I'm fixing you. The pain you feel is normal. I need you to stay calm. Can you do that for me? The dragon's eyes were wild with pain and confusion. His claws pressed against her neck. One wrong move and he would snap her spine. I know it hurts, Sarah continued. But I'm almost done. Just a little longer. You're being so brave. I'm so proud of you. Just breathe. Nice and slow. In and out, Korthax's breathing was ragged. His claws trembled. Sarah could feel them pressing harder, then softer, then harder again. That's right, Sarah said softly. Just breathe. You're safe. I promise you're safe. Nothing is going to hurt you while I'm here. Slowly, Korthax's grip loosened. His eyes focused on her face. Really focused. Like he was seeing her for the first time. Seeing that she wasn't afraid. Seeing that she was trying to help. His clawed hand opened and dropped away from her throat. His head fell back onto the table. His eyes closed again. Sarah took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking now. But only now. Only after the danger had passed. Give him another dose of anesthetic, she told the robot. Double strength this time. She picked up her tools again. Her hands stopped shaking. Back to work. She still had a patient to save. In the observation room, no one spoke. They just stared at the small human doctor as she went back to operating on the dragon that had almost killed her seconds ago. Dr. Velshara's mandibles clicked softly. Incredible, she whispered. Absolutely incredible. 14 hours. That was how long Sarah had been in surgery. 14 hours of cutting, stitching, cleaning, and repairing. Her feet hurt. Her back screamed with pain. Her eyes burned from the bright lights. But Korthax was stable. His vitals were steady. His wounds were closed. Sarah stepped back from the operating table. She pulled off her gloves. They were covered in green acid blood. The gloves had holes burned through them in several places. Her hands underneath were red and blistered. Minor acid burns. Nothing serious. Nothing that wouldn't heal. "It's done," she said quietly to the robot assistant. "Move him to recovery. Keep him sedated for another 6 hours. Then reduce the dose slowly. Monitor everything." "Understood, Dr. Chen," the robot replied. "Your performance was exceptional." Sarah smiled weakly. She was too tired to feel proud. Too exhausted to feel anything except relief. She walked out of the operating room on shaky legs. The moment she stepped through the door, applause erupted. The alien doctors in the observation room were clapping, clicking, whistling, and making whatever sounds their species used for approval. Dr. Velshara hurried down the stairs to meet her. The insect doctor's compound eyes were shining with something that looked like tears. "Dr. Chen, that was the most incredible surgery I have ever witnessed in 40 years of medicine. You saved a patient that everyone said was unsavable. You stayed calm when a draconian grabbed your throat. You are either the bravest person I have ever met or the craziest." Sarah shrugged. "Maybe a bit of both. Can I go sleep now?" Velshara laughed, a clicking, chittering sound. "Of course, rest, you earned it. But I should warn you. This surgery was recorded. The footage is already spreading across the medical networks. By tomorrow, everyone in the galaxy will know what you did." Sarah groaned. "Great. Just what I need. Fame." But Velshara was right. By the next morning, Sarah's face was everywhere. Medical stations across the galaxy were showing the footage. News networks were running stories. Social networks were exploding with comments and reactions. Some aliens were amazed. They called Sarah a hero, a miracle worker, a genius. Others were angry. They said she was reckless, that she broke protocol, that she endangered herself in the station, that humans were too emotional and unpredictable to practice medicine. Medical boards started investigations. They questioned her methods. They examined her credentials. They debated whether her techniques were acceptable. Sarah ignored all of it. She had more important things to worry about. Like her patient. 3 days after the surgery, Korthax woke up. Sarah was in his recovery room when it happened. She had been checking his bandages and monitoring his healing progress. Draconian regeneration was impressive. His burns were already starting to fade. New scales were growing where the old ones had been destroyed. Korthax's orange eyes opened slowly. They focused on Sarah's face. She was standing next to his bed with a data pad in her hands. "Good morning," Sarah said calmly. "How are you feeling?" Korthax stared at her for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. Then he spoke. His voice was deep and rough like grinding rocks. You are the one who operated on me." "That's right. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. Do you remember anything from the surgery?" Korthax's claws flexed. "I remember pain. I remember waking up. I remember grabbing you. I could have killed you, but you didn't," Sarah said simply. "You let me go. That took control, strength." The dragon made a sound somewhere between a growl and a laugh. "You were not afraid. I was a little afraid," Sarah admitted. "But fear doesn't help anyone. You needed surgery. I'm a surgeon. That's all that mattered." Korthax studied her with those burning eyes. "Most species fear my kind. They refuse to help us. They let us die. This is why we learned to never show weakness. Why we became hard, violent." Sarah sat down in the chair next to his bed. "That sounds lonely." The dragon's eyes widened slightly. No one had ever said that to him before. "It is lonely," Korthax said quietly. "For thousands of years, my people have been alone. We are strong. We are feared. But we are alone. We have no allies, no friends, no doctors who will treat us. Only enemies and prey." Sarah made notes on her data pad. "Well, you have a doctor now, at least while you're on this station. Your burns are healing well. The regeneration is faster than I expected. You should be able to leave in about 2 weeks." Korthax was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke again. His voice was softer than before. "Why did you help me? Your kind are small. Weak, I could eat you in one bite. Why risk your life?" Sarah looked up from her data pad. Because you're a person, you were hurt. You needed help. That's what doctors do. We help people. All people. Even scary dragon people who could eat us in one bite. She smiled. Besides, you're not as scary as some of my patients back on Earth. I once had a guy threaten to stab me with a broken bottle while I was stitching up his head. You're actually pretty polite compared to him. Korthax made that sound again. That growl laugh. You humans are strange. We get that a lot, Sarah said. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah visited Korthax every day. She changed his bandages. She monitored his healing. She made sure he was comfortable. And they talked. Korthax told her about draconian culture, about how their society was built on strength and survival, about how showing weakness meant death, about how they had never developed advanced medicine because only the strong were supposed to survive. Sarah told him about Earth, about human history, about how humans had fought diseases and disasters, about how human medicine was born from compassion and stubbornness, about how humans believed everyone deserved a chance to live, even if they were difficult or dangerous. Other doctors started watching these conversations through the security cameras. Word spread. The human and the dragon were becoming friends. It was unprecedented, unheard of, impossible, but it was happening. On the day Korthax was scheduled to leave, something unexpected occurred. A group of draconian elders arrived at the station. There were 5 of them. Each one was massive and ancient. Their scales were scarred from countless battles. Their eyes burned with inner fire. The station went into panic mode. Security doubled. Doctors evacuated to safe zones. Everyone expected violence, but the elders didn't come to fight. They came to see Sarah. They found her in Korthax's room doing a final checkup before his departure. The 5 ancient dragons filled the doorway. Their presence was overwhelming. The air felt thick and hot. Dr. Velshara tried to intervene. She placed herself between Sarah and the dragons. Please, honored elders. Dr. Chen was only doing her job. She meant no offense to your kind. She was trying to save a life. One of the elders, a massive female with silver scales, stepped forward. Her voice was like an earthquake. Offense? We are not offended. We are here to thank her. The room went silent. Thank her? Draconians never thanked anyone. The silver elder looked at Sarah. Her burning eyes were intense but not hostile. You saved Korthax when no one else would. You showed him mercy, compassion, courage. These are things we thought our species could not receive from others. You have shown us we were wrong. Sarah didn't know what to say. She just nodded. The elder continued. Korthax has told us about your methods, your calm, your skill. He says you treated him not as a monster but as a patient, as a person. This is new to us. This is valuable. Another elder spoke, a male with black scales like Korthax. Our people have suffered for generations because we had no doctors. We die from injuries that could be healed. We die alone because no one will help us. You have changed this. You have shown that healing is possible, that trust is possible. The silver elder placed a massive clawed hand over her chest. A draconian gesture of respect. Dr. Sarah Chen. On behalf of all draconians, I offer you our deepest gratitude, and I ask if you would consider accepting other draconian patients in the future. Sarah looked at Korthax. The young dragon was watching her with those orange eyes. They looked hopeful. She looked back at the elders and smiled. Of course. Any patient who needs help is welcome. That's what doctors do. The elders exchanged looks. Then slowly all 5 of them placed their hands over their chests in respect. It was the first time in recorded history that draconians had shown respect to another species, and it was all because one human doctor refused to be afraid. The next 3 months changed everything. Sarah's surgery became the most watched medical footage in galactic history. Medical schools used it as a teaching tool. Students studied her techniques. Doctors debated her methods. Her name became known across hundreds of star systems, but fame brought problems. The Galactic Medical Council called an emergency meeting. They wanted to discuss the human doctor who broke all their rules, who touched patients with her bare hands, who took risks they considered unacceptable, who succeeded where their careful protocols had failed. Sarah received the summons on a Tuesday morning. She was in her quarters drinking coffee and reviewing patient files. The message appeared on her screen with an official seal. Dr. Sarah Chen, you are required to appear before the Galactic Medical Council in 7 Days to answer questions regarding your treatment of patient Corthax. Your medical license will be under review. Failure to appear will result in immediate suspension. Sarah stared at the message. Then she sighed and took another sip of coffee. She had been expecting this. Dr. Velshara was furious when she heard the news. She clicked and chittered angrily around Sarah's office. This is ridiculous. You saved a life. You did what all of us were too afraid to do. And now they want to punish you for it? Sarah shrugged. I broke their protocols. I didn't follow standard procedures. From their perspective, I'm a risk. You're a hero, Velshara insisted. Maybe, but heroes who break rules still have to face the consequences. It's fine. I'll go to their meeting. I'll explain what I did and why. If they take my license, I'll deal with it. You seem very calm about this. Sarah smiled. Getting upset won't help. Whatever happens, happens. The tribunal was held on a massive space station near the galactic core. It was a beautiful structure made of crystal and metal. Inside it was cold and formal. Everything was designed to make people feel small and intimidated. Sarah walked into the hearing room wearing her simple blue medical uniform. Around her, dozens of alien doctors in fancy robes watched from elevated seats. They represented every major medical institution in the galaxy. Their expressions ranged from curious to hostile. At the front of the room sat the 5 council members. They were the most respected doctors in the galaxy. A Krellian neurologist, a Zytherian surgeon, a Pelthian cardiologist, a robotic diagnostics expert, and a Varxian pharmacologist. The Krellian council member spoke first. Her tentacles moved in slow, deliberate patterns. Dr. Chen, you stand before this council to answer for violations of medical protocol. You operated on a draconian patient without proper authorization. You used unapproved techniques. You endangered yourself and potentially the entire station. How do you respond to these charges? Sarah stepped forward. Her voice was calm and clear. I respond by saying that I saved a patient's life. Corthax was dying. No one else would help him. If I had followed your protocols, he would be dead. Instead, he's alive and recovering. The Zytherian leaned forward. Her thin body cast strange shadows. Protocols exist for a reason, Dr. Chen. They protect patients and medical staff. Your actions were reckless. You could have died. I could have, Sarah agreed. But I didn't, and neither did my patient. The protocols you're talking about were designed for safety. But they also created a situation where an entire species was labeled as untreatable. That's not medicine. That's abandonment. Murmurs rippled through the observers. Some sounded approving. Others sounded offended. The robot council member spoke. Its voice was perfectly neutral. Your emotional approach is noted, Dr. Chen. However, medicine must be based on logic and proven methods. Your techniques were improvised, unproven, dangerous. Sarah shook her head. My techniques were adapted. That's different from improvised. I've performed thousands of surgeries. I understood the risks. I made informed decisions based on my training and experience. Yes, I adapted to the situation. That's what good doctors do. We adapt, we problem solve. We don't just give up because the computer says it's too risky. The Pelthian council member's blue fur bristled with irritation. You speak as if you know better than the combined wisdom of galactic medicine. No, Sarah said firmly. I speak as someone who knows that wisdom without courage is useless. You have advanced technology, brilliant minds, detailed protocols. But what good is all of that if you're too afraid to use it? What's the point of being a doctor if you refuse to treat patients because they're difficult or dangerous? She looked around the room at all the assembled doctors. Back on Earth, we have a saying, first, do no harm. But there's another part people forget. Help or at least do no harm. Turning away a dying patient is harm. Letting someone die because you're scared is harm. I helped, that's all I did. That's all any doctor should do. The Varxian council member had been quiet until now. She was small and covered in iridescent scales that changed color with her mood. Currently, they were shifting between purple and green. You make a compelling argument, Dr. Chen, but you must understand our concern. If every doctor decided to ignore protocols and act on emotion, chaos would result. Medicine requires order, structure, rules. Sarah nodded. I agree. Rules are important, but rules should serve medicine, not the other way around. Your protocols created a situation where an entire species was considered untreatable. That's not good medicine. That's good bureaucracy. There's a difference. Before the council could respond, the hearing room doors burst open. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. Everyone turned to look. Korthak stood in the doorway. The young Draconian had traveled across the galaxy to be here. Behind him stood the 5 Draconian elders, and behind them dozens more dragons, an entire delegation. The Krellian Council members' tentacles went rigid with fear. "This is a closed hearing. You cannot be here." Korthax's voice was loud enough to shake the walls. "You are judging the one who saved my life, the one who showed my people mercy when no one else would. I will be heard." The Silver Elder stepped forward. Her presence filled the room with heat and light. "For 10,000 years my people have been alone in the galaxy. We were too dangerous to help, too frightening to trust. We accepted this. We became hard. We embraced isolation and violence because we had no other choice." She pointed at Sarah with one massive claw. "Then this human came. Small, fragile, weak by our standards. But she was not afraid. She did what all of you refused to do. She helped. And in doing so, she showed us something we had forgotten. That mercy exists. That healing is possible. That we are not monsters to be feared, but people who deserve care." Another elder spoke. His voice was like grinding stone. "Because of Dr. Chen, Draconians have begun to change. We are building hospitals, training our own doctors, learning compassion. She started this. She showed us the way." Korthax moved closer to the council. His eyes burned with intensity. "If you punish her for saving me, you tell my entire species that the galaxy still rejects us, that we are still untouchable, still monsters. Is that the message you want to send?" The council members looked at each other. The observers whispered frantically. No one had expected this. The Silver Elder placed her clawed hand over her chest in the draconian gesture of respect. "Dr. Sarah Chen has done more for galactic peace and understanding than 1,000 treaties. She bridged a gap that was 10,000 years old. She proved that even the most dangerous patient deserves care. She showed that fear should not dictate medicine." The Elder's scales seemed to glow with inner fire. "If you take her license, you lose the only doctor brave enough to treat the untreatable, and you gain the enmity of every Draconian in the galaxy." It wasn't a threat, not exactly, but everyone in the room understood the weight of those words. The Draconians were one of the most powerful warrior species in the galaxy. Their friendship was valuable. Their anger was terrifying. The Krellian Council members' tentacles trembled. She looked at Sarah, then at the dragons, then at her fellow council members. Finally, she spoke. "This council will take a recess to deliberate." "Dr. Chen, please wait outside." Sarah nodded and left the chamber. The dragons followed her. Korthax walked beside her, his massive form a protective shadow. "Thanks for coming," Sarah said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." Korthax looked down at her with those orange eyes. "You saved my life when no one else would. This is the least I can do. Besides, you were right. Fear should not dictate medicine. My people are learning that now. Thanks to you," Sarah smiled. Then she sat down to wait for the council's decision. Whatever happened next, she knew she had done the right thing. That was all that mattered. The council deliberated for 3 hours. Sarah sat in the waiting area with the Draconian delegation around her. Other doctors passed by and stared. Some looked curious. Some looked angry. Some looked afraid of the dragons gathered in the corridor. Sarah used the time to catch up on medical journals on her datapad. The Silver Elder watched her with interest. "You are not nervous," the Elder observed. Sarah shrugged without looking up. "Being nervous won't change the outcome. Either they let me keep my license or they don't. Worrying about it is just wasted energy." The Elder made a rumbling sound that might have been laughter. "You are very practical for such a small creature." Sarah smiled. "I'm a trauma surgeon. If I wasn't practical, I'd be dead by now." Finally, the doors opened. A young assistant stepped out and gestured for Sarah to return. She stood up, smoothed her uniform, and walked back into the hearing chamber. The dragons followed her, filling the doorway with their massive forms. The 5 council members sat in their elevated seats. Their expressions were unreadable. The Krellian spoke first. Her tentacles moved in slow, measured patterns. "Dr. Sarah Chen, this council has considered your case carefully. We have reviewed your actions, your methods, and your results. We have also considered the testimony of the Draconian delegation." She paused. The room was completely silent. "It is the decision of this council that your medical license will not be revoked." A wave of sound swept through the observers. Some gasped. Others cheered. The dragons behind Sarah rumbled with approval. The Krellian raised a tentacle for silence. However, this decision comes with conditions. You broke our protocols. We cannot simply ignore that. But we also cannot ignore that you succeeded where our protocols failed. Therefore, we are creating a new classification of medicine. We are calling it extreme species medicine. The Cytherian council member leaned forward. This new field will focus on treating species that are currently considered too dangerous or too difficult for standard medical care. Species like the Draconians, the Vrenks, the Kohler, the ones we have been turning away for generations because we did not know how to help them safely. The robot council member's voice was precise and mechanical. You, Dr. Chen, will lead the development of this new field. You will train other doctors in your techniques. You will help us write new protocols that balance safety with courage, technology with compassion, logic with heart. Sarah blinked. She had expected either punishment or acquittal. She had not expected this. The Pelthian's fur rippled with what might have been embarrassment. You were correct, Dr. Chen. We became so focused on safety that we forgot about courage, so focused on protocols that we forgot about patience. You reminded us what medicine is supposed to be, helping people, all people, no matter how difficult or dangerous they might be. The Varxian scales shifted to a bright blue color. We are also establishing a new medical facility. It will be called the Frontier Medical Station. It will specialize in treating extreme cases that other hospitals refuse. You will be the chief of medicine there. If you accept. Sarah looked at the council. Then she looked back at the dragons. Korthax was watching her with those orange eyes. He nodded slightly. She turned back to the council. I accept. On one condition. The Krellian's tentacles twitched with surprise. You're in no position to make demands, Dr. Chen. Sarah smiled. Not a demand, just a condition. I want the facility to accept any patient who needs help. No matter what species they are. No matter how dangerous. No matter how strange or frightening. Everyone gets treated. Everyone gets care. No exceptions. The council members looked at each other. Then the Krellian nodded slowly. Agreed. That was already our intention. We are tired of turning away patients because they scare us. Then I accept, Sarah said. When do we start? The next 6 months were a blur of activity. The Frontier Medical Station was built in orbit around a neutral planet near the center of the galaxy. It was massive. Larger than most cities. It had hundreds of operating rooms, thousands of beds, and equipment for treating every known species. Sarah recruited doctors from across the galaxy. She looked for doctors who were brave, creative, compassionate. Doctors who believed that every life was worth saving. She found humans, of course. But she also found aliens who shared her philosophy. A Krellian surgeon who had always wanted to help the dangerous cases. A Pelthian anesthesiologist who believed in taking risks. A robotic diagnostics expert who had been programmed with creativity instead of just caution. Together, they created a new kind of medicine. They combined alien technology with human adaptability. They wrote protocols that were both safe and flexible. They trained in handling difficult patients, dangerous patients, patients that everyone else had given up on. The Draconians were among the first to send patients. Then came the Vrenks, a species whose bodies were made of living crystal and who shattered if touched incorrectly. Then the Kohler, who breathed methane and whose blood was caustic enough to eat through most materials. Then species that no one had even heard of before, species from the edge of the galaxy, species that had been suffering alone for generations because no one would help them. Sarah and her team treated them all. They adapted. They learned. They innovated. Sometimes they succeeded. Sometimes they failed. But they always tried. They never turned anyone away. Word spread across the galaxy. There was a hospital now. A place where anyone could go. A place where being dangerous or different didn't matter. A place where doctors actually cared. 1 year after opening, Sarah stood in her office overlooking the main medical bay. Through the window, she could see dozens of patients. Draconians recovering from injuries. Franks being carefully reconstructed. Kohler receiving treatments in specially sealed chambers. Species she didn't even recognize yet being cared for by her staff. Korthax visited regularly. He had trained as a medic himself now. He helped treat other Draconians. He showed them that accepting help wasn't weakness. That healing was possible. That they weren't alone anymore. He found Sarah in her office that day. She was reviewing patient files and drinking coffee. You look tired, he observed. Always am, Sarah said with a smile. But it's a good tired. The kind you get from doing important work. Korthak settled himself on the reinforced floor of her office. His tail curled around him. I wanted to thank you, again, for everything. You didn't just save my life that day. You changed my entire species, changed how we see ourselves, changed how the galaxy sees us. Sarah shook her head. I just did my job. You did the hard part. You and your people chose to change, chose to trust. That takes real courage. The dragon's eyes glowed softly. Do you ever regret it? Taking that risk? Breaking those rules? Sarah looked out at the medical bay. At all the patients being treated. At all the lives being saved. Never. Not even for a second. Her communicator beeped. Emergency patient incoming. Species unknown. Extremely hostile. Multiple hospitals have refused treatment. Sarah stood up and grabbed her medical kit. Korthax rose to his feet as well. Shall we? He asked. Sarah grinned. Let's show them how Earth does emergency medicine. They walked together toward the emergency bay. A human doctor and a draconian medic. Partners. Friends. Proof that courage and compassion could bridge any gap. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Technology was powerful. Knowledge was valuable. Protocols were useful. But none of it mattered without one simple thing. The willingness to help. That was what made humans special. Not superior technology, not greater strength, not advanced intelligence, just the stubborn, foolish, beautiful refusal to give up on anyone. Even creepy dragons that everyone else was too afraid to touch, especially them. Because that's what doctors do. They help people, all people, no matter what.